It was an idea born of fascination, a desire to delve into the eerie corners of real-life tales without resorting to the tired tropes of typical horror narratives. Each story was to be a window into the chilling possibilities of human experience, where the line between reality and nightmare blurred into unsettling ambiguity. The intention was not to seek out ghosts or haunted houses, but to unravel the disturbing truths that lurked beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. As I embarked on this journey, I aimed to narrate stories that would grip the imagination and send shivers down the spine, tales that would resonate with a sense of unease long after the final words had faded into the silence. And so, with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, I began my exploration of the unknown, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within the shadows of everyday existence. I remember the moment the invitation arrived, a seemingly innocent slip of paper that would irrevocably alter the course of my night and perhaps even my life. It came unexpectedly, nestled among the mundane bills and advertisements that cluttered my mailbox, a stark contrast to the banality of everyday correspondence. As I unfolded the crisp white envelope, my eyes fell upon the elegant script that adorned the invitation within. It was an invitation to a dinner party, and not just any dinner party, but one hosted by none other than my ex-wife. The very thought sent a shiver down my spine, stirring memories of a past I had long sought to leave behind. Despite the initial shock, curiosity got the better of me. Why would she invite me, after all this time? What could she possibly want? Questions swirled in my mind as I weighed the pros and cons of accepting such a peculiar invitation. In the end, curiosity won out over caution, and I found myself responding in the affirmative. Perhaps it was foolishness, or perhaps it was simply a desire to confront the ghosts of my past. Whatever the reason, I knew that this dinner party would be anything but ordinary. With each step towards the stylish house nestled in the Hollywood Hills, my apprehension grew like an insidious vine creeping up the walls of my mind. The evening air seemed to carry whispers of foreboding, casting long shadows that danced ominously in the fading light. As I reached the imposing front door, adorned with an intricately carved knocker, I hesitated. Doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve, urging me to turn back and flee from the unknown. But curiosity, that relentless companion, urged me forward, driving me to push aside my misgivings and cross the threshold into the unknown. The scene that greeted me was one of subdued elegance, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within my own mind. Soft candlelight flickered across polished surfaces, casting a warm glow that belied the chill that had settled in the pit of my stomach. My ex-wife stood at the entrance, a smile playing upon her lips that failed to reach her eyes. Beside her stood her new partner, a figure shrouded in an aura of mystery that set my nerves on edge. Despite the tumultuous emotions churning within me, I plastered on a mask of polite indifference and stepped forward to greet them. Little did I know, this seemingly innocuous gesture would mark the beginning of a descent into darkness from which there would be no return. The journey to the stylish house nestled in the Hollywood Hills felt like a pilgrimage into the heart of uncertainty. Each twist and turn of the road brought me closer to the looming specter of the past, a past I had struggled to leave behind, but which now beckoned with irresistible allure. As I pulled up to the imposing gates, I couldn't help but feel a pang of trepidation. The house, bathed in the soft glow of evening, stood as a silent sentinel guarding its secrets with stoic resolve. Stepping out of the car, I was greeted by the cool night air, tinged with the scent of impending dread. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I made my way up the winding path, each step bringing me closer to the threshold of uncertainty. At the top of the steps, bathed in the warm embrace of the porch light, stood my ex-wife. Her gaze, cold and inscrutable, bore into mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Beside her stood her new partner, a shadowy figure whose presence seemed to cast a pall over the entire scene. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as we exchanged terse greetings, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Then, with a gesture that bordered on the theatrical, my ex-wife ushered me inside, and I crossed the threshold into the heart of darkness. Inside the stylish house, the air hummed with an undercurrent of tension, palpable yet unspoken. The guests, a motley assortment of faces both familiar and unfamiliar, mingled in uneasy silence, their polite smiles failing to mask the unease that lingered beneath the surface. As I navigated the crowded rooms, engaging in stilted conversation with the other guests, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. There was an edge to their smiles, a glint in their eyes that spoke of hidden agendas and concealed truths. I tried to brush off my growing unease, attributing it to the strained dynamics of social gatherings. But the more I observed, the more convinced I became that there was something sinister lurking beneath the facade of polite society. Their words were laced with subtle insinuations, their laughter tinged with an air of menace that sent shivers down my spine. I felt like a pawn in a game whose rules I did not understand, trapped in a web of deceit and manipulation from which there was no escape. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating further into the shadows, seeking solace in the anonymity of darkness. But even there, I could not escape the feeling of being watched, of being scrutinized by unseen eyes that hungered for secrets yet to be revealed. In that moment, I knew with a chilling certainty that this was no ordinary dinner party, and that the true horrors of the night had only just begun to unfold. As I meandered through the opulent halls of the house, my eyes were drawn to the curious artifacts that adorned its walls like trophies of a bygone era. Strange symbols etched into ancient stone, their meanings lost to the passage of time, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy that sent shivers down my spine. I paused before a particularly intricate carving, my fingers tracing the lines of a sigil whose purpose eluded me. Its presence felt like a whisper from the past, a reminder of forgotten truths that lurked in the shadows of human history. Around me, the air hummed with a subtle electricity, as if the very walls of the house were alive with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Relics of a bygone age mingled with modern furnishings, creating a surreal tableau that blurred the line between past and present. Despite my growing unease, I couldn't tear my gaze away from the artifacts that surrounded me. Each piece seemed to hold a story of its own, a tale of ancient rites and forbidden knowledge that sent a thrill of fear coursing through my veins. It was then that I realized the true nature of the dinner party, the sinister undercurrent that pulsed beneath its elegant facade. This was not a gathering of friends and acquaintances, but a congregation of something darker, something older than time itself. And as I stood amidst the relics of a forgotten age, I knew with a sinking heart that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. As the evening wore on, a sense of unease settled over me like a suffocating blanket, suffusing every corner of the elegant house with an aura of palpable tension. With each passing moment, the facade of normalcy crumbled away, revealing the festering underbelly of deceit that lurked beneath. I found myself scrutinizing the behavior of the hosts and guests with a growing sense of paranoia, my senses heightened to the slightest hint of deception or malice. Their smiles seemed forced, their laughter hollow, as if they were merely actors playing their parts in a sinister charade. Subtle inconsistencies in their behavior caught my attention, like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. Every shadow seemed to conceal hidden dangers, every whisper carried the promise of betrayal. I felt like a pawn in a game whose rules I did not understand, a puppet whose strings were being pulled by unseen hands. And as the night wore on, my paranoia reached a fever pitch, threatening to consume me whole. For I knew that the true horrors of the evening had yet to reveal themselves, and that the worst was yet to come. Try as I might, I found myself unable to shake off the gnawing feeling of dread that clung to me like a shadow, haunting my every step as I navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the house. It was as if the very walls themselves whispered secrets of impending doom, their cold touch sending shivers racing down my spine. With each passing moment, the sense of unease grew more acute, a relentless specter that dogged my every move. I tried to dismiss it as mere paranoia, the product of an overactive imagination, fueled by the unsettling atmosphere of the dinner party. But deep down, I knew that there was more to it than that. The subtle nuances in the behavior of the hosts and guests only served to fuel my growing apprehension. Their smiles seemed too forced, their laughter too hollow, as if they were all playing their parts in some macabre pantomime orchestrated by forces beyond my comprehension. I felt like a lone voice crying out in the wilderness, a lone sentinel standing vigil against the encroaching darkness. But try as I might, I could not shake the feeling that something sinister lurked just beyond the edges of my perception, waiting patiently to reveal itself in all its malevolent glory. And so, I pressed on, driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth lurking beneath the facade of normalcy. For I knew that the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined, and that the fate of not just myself, but perhaps all of humanity, hung in the balance. As the night deepened, and the veneer of civility began to crack under the weight of hidden agendas, I found myself drawn unwittingly into the web of intrigue that enveloped the house like a shroud. Perched on the fringes of the gathering, I strained to catch the whispered conversations that flitted through the air like phantoms, carrying with them fragments of a truth too terrible to comprehend. In hushed tones, the hosts and their guests spoke of ancient pacts and forbidden rituals, their words laden with a sinister weight that sent a shiver racing down my spine. They spoke of sacrifices made in the name of powers beyond mortal understanding, of dark secrets hidden from the light of day. With each whispered revelation, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, forming a picture so horrifying that I could scarcely bring myself to acknowledge its existence. The hosts and their guests were not mere mortals, but something else entirely, something ancient and malevolent beyond reckoning. And as the truth began to dawn upon me with a sickening clarity, I realized that I was no longer a mere bystander, but a pawn in a game whose stakes were nothing less than the fate of the world itself. In a chilling moment of clarity, the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place, revealing a truth so horrifying that it threatened to shatter the fragile facade of reality itself. The dinner party was not merely a gathering of friends and acquaintances, but a sinister congregation bound together by a dark and malevolent purpose. As I pieced together the fragments of conversation and subtle clues that littered the night like breadcrumbs leading to damnation, I came to the horrifying realization that the true intentions behind the gathering were far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The hosts and their guests were not simply revelers in the throes of a twisted celebration, but members of a cult, disciples of a dark and ancient deity whose hunger for power knew no bounds. Their smiles were not the expressions of joy and camaraderie, but the grim masks of those who danced upon the precipice of madness. With a sinking heart, I understood that I had been drawn into a web of deceit and manipulation from which there could be no escape. The dinner party was but a facade, a veil of normalcy draped over a gathering of souls bound together by a common purpose: to usher in an age of darkness and despair. And as the truth settled over me like a suffocating blanket, I knew that I stood alone against the encroaching tide of evil, a lone voice crying out in the wilderness against the forces of darkness that threatened to consume us all. As I navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the house, my heart pounding like a drumbeat in the darkness, I stumbled upon a scene that sent a chill racing down my spine. Hidden away in a forgotten corner of the mansion, I discovered evidence of a ritual so twisted and depraved that it defied all rational explanation. Symbols etched into the floor in blood-red paint glowed dimly in the flickering candlelight, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters in the night. Strange artifacts adorned the makeshift altar, their sinister purpose obscured by layers of dust and decay. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch the cold stone, feeling the weight of centuries of darkness pressing down upon me like a suffocating shroud. The air was thick with the scent of incense and decay, a tangible reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. In that moment, I understood with a sickening certainty that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The hosts and their guests were not merely enthusiasts of the occult, but devotees of a dark and malevolent deity whose hunger for power knew no bounds. And as the realization washed over me like a tidal wave, I knew that I stood alone against the encroaching tide of evil, a lone sentinel standing vigil against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume us all. Panic clawed at the edges of my sanity, threatening to drag me down into the abyss of despair as the horrifying truth of my predicament settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I was trapped in a house teeming with dangerous individuals, each one a pawn in a game whose rules I did not understand. The walls seemed to close in around me, their silent whispers echoing with the promise of impending doom. I tried to steady my trembling hands, to quell the rising tide of fear that threatened to overwhelm me, but it was no use. The darkness pressed in from all sides, a relentless adversary that sought to consume me whole. With every passing moment, the air grew thicker, heavier, as if weighted down by the malevolent intentions of those who lurked in the shadows. I could feel their eyes upon me, their gaze burning into my flesh like searing brands, as if daring me to defy their will. In that moment, I knew with a sickening certainty that escape was impossible, that I was nothing more than a lamb led to slaughter in the cruel theater of fate. The hosts and their guests were not merely mortals, but something else entirely, something ancient and terrible beyond reckoning. And as the realization washed over me like a tidal wave, I knew that I was truly alone in the darkness, a solitary figure standing against the encroaching tide of evil that threatened to consume us all. Summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I confronted my ex-wife and her enigmatic partner, the words tumbling from my lips like desperate pleas for salvation in the face of impending doom. I demanded answers, demanded to know the truth behind the sinister charade that had ensnared us all. Their faces remained impassive, betraying no hint of emotion as they regarded me with cold detachment. It was as if they were merely actors playing their parts in a twisted pantomime, their true intentions hidden behind a veil of deceit. But I refused to be cowed by their silent intimidation, refused to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. With a trembling voice, I demanded a way out, a means of escape from the nightmare that had engulfed us all. For a moment, there was silence, a pregnant pause that hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud on the horizon. And then, with a chilling smile that sent a shiver racing down my spine, the word struck me like a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs and leaving me reeling in shock. I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined, a web of deceit and betrayal that ensnared us all in its tangled embrace. And as the truth settled over me like a suffocating shroud, I knew that my only hope lay in fighting back against the encroaching darkness, in standing firm against the forces of evil that threatened to consume us all. Tension simmered in the air like a pot on the brink of boiling over, each moment pregnant with the promise of violence, as the true nature of the cult was laid bare for all to see. With each passing second, the veil of civility fell away, revealing the festering heart of darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. I stood at the center of the storm, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat in the darkness, as the confrontation spiraled out of control. Harsh words were exchanged, accusations hurled like arrows in the heat of battle, as the fragile bonds of camaraderie shattered like glass. And then, with a suddenness that left me reeling, violence erupted like a volcano in full eruption, consuming everything in its path with a voracious hunger. Fists flew, bodies collided in a whirlwind of chaos and confusion, as the true horror of the night was laid bare for all to see. I fought with a desperation born of sheer survival instinct, my fists raining down upon my assailants with a fury born of righteous indignation. Blood flowed like wine, staining the pristine floors of the mansion with a macabre tapestry of violence and despair. In that moment, there was no room for fear, no room for doubt. There was only the fight, the struggle for survival against the encroaching tide of evil that threatened to consume us all. And as the dust settled and the echoes of violence faded into the darkness, I knew with a sickening certainty that the true horror of the night had only just begun to reveal itself. For the cult's true nature had been laid bare, and its hunger for power knew no bounds. With every fiber of my being aflame with the primal instinct of survival, I fought tooth and nail against my attackers, my body a vessel of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Adrenaline surged through my veins like a torrential flood, driving me forward with a ferocity born of sheer desperation. Blows rained down upon me like a hailstorm of fists and fury, each one a testament to the savagery of our struggle. But I refused to yield, refused to surrender to the darkness that threatened to engulf me whole. With a strength I never knew I possessed, I fought back against my assailants, my fists striking out with a fury born of righteous indignation. Blood mingled with sweat as the battle raged on, painting a grim tableau of violence and despair upon the canvas of the night. And then, with a suddenness that left me breathless, victory was mine. With one final desperate push, I broke free from the grasp of my attackers, leaving them sprawled upon the floor like fallen warriors in the aftermath of battle. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I fled into the night, the echoes of violence fading into the darkness behind me like a distant memory. My heart pounded in my chest like a drumbeat in the silence, urging me forward with a single primal imperative: survival. As I stumbled into the cool embrace of the night, I knew that the horrors I had witnessed were but a prelude to the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. But for now, I was free, a solitary figure standing against the encroaching tide of evil that threatened to consume us all. Traumatized by the horrors I had witnessed, I stumbled blindly into the enveloping embrace of the night, my mind reeling with the echoes of violence and despair that lingered like phantoms in the darkness. Each step felt like a journey into the abyss, each breath a desperate gasp for air in a world suffocating beneath the weight of its own depravity. The events of the evening haunted me like a ghostly specter, refusing to be exorcised from the recesses of my mind. The images played out before me like scenes from a nightmare, each one more horrifying than the last, as the true extent of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of reality was laid bare. With each passing moment, the weight of my trauma grew heavier, threatening to crush me beneath its suffocating embrace. But still I pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive against all odds, to defy the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume me whole. As I fled into the night, the echoes of violence fading into the darkness behind me like a distant memory, I knew that the battle was far from over. The cult's true nature had been revealed, its hunger for power laid bare for all to see, and I knew that I was but a solitary figure standing against the encroaching tide of evil that threatened to engulf us all. But for now, I was free, a lone survivor in a world teetering on the brink of oblivion. And as I disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind the horrors of the night, I knew that the fight was far from over, and that the true battle for survival had only just begun. As I fled into the night, the tendrils of darkness coiling around me like a suffocating embrace, I couldn't shake the lingering sense of unease that clung to me like a shadow. The true extent of the host's depravity had been laid bare for all to see, but their ultimate fate remained shrouded in mystery, hinting at the lingering threat they posed to the world at large. The events of the evening had peeled back the veneer of normalcy that had masked their true intentions, revealing a darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of their elegant facade. But whether they would face justice for their crimes or continue to lurk in the shadows, biding their time until the next unsuspecting victim stumbled into their web of deceit, remained to be seen. As I disappeared into the anonymity of the night, haunted by the echoes of violence and despair that lingered in my wake, I knew that the battle was far from over. The hosts may have been defeated for now, but the true threat they posed to the world at large remained, a festering wound in the fabric of reality that threatened to tear us apart at the seams. And so, as I vanished into the darkness, leaving behind the horrors of the night, I knew that the fight was far from over. The true battle for survival had only just begun, and whether we would emerge victorious or succumb to the encroaching tide of evil that threatened to consume us all remained to be seen. As I retreated into the solitude of the night, the events of the evening weighed heavily upon my mind like a millstone around my neck. The chilling experience had left an indelible mark upon my soul, its impact reverberating through every fiber of my being like ripples upon a dark and turbulent sea. The horrors I had witnessed had peeled back the layers of complacency that had once shielded me from the harsh realities of the world, revealing a darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of everyday existence. No longer could I turn a blind eye to the evils that lurked in the shadows, no longer could I pretend that the world was a safe and predictable place. The realization of the true nature of the host's depravity had shattered my illusions, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty and fear. The lingering threat they posed to the world at large loomed large in my mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of our existence in the face of unspeakable evil. But amidst the darkness, there was also a glimmer of hope, a spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. For though the battle may have been lost, the war was far from over, and I vowed to continue the fight against the encroaching tide of darkness with every ounce of strength I possessed. And so, as I disappeared into the anonymity of the night, haunted by the echoes of violence and despair that lingered in my wake, I knew that the chilling experience had changed me irrevocably. But it had also forged me into a warrior against the forces of evil, a solitary figure standing against the encroaching tide of darkness that threatened to consume us all. As I vanish into the darkness, leaving behind the echoes of horror and despair that linger in my wake, I leave you, dear viewers, with a chilling reminder of the fragility of our existence in the face of unspeakable evil. The tales I've shared with you are but a glimpse into the abyss of human depravity, a mere whisper of the terrors that lurk just beyond the edge of perception. But fear not, for though the night may be dark and full of terrors, there is always hope. For even in the darkest of times, the light of courage and defiance can pierce the shadows, illuminating the path to redemption and salvation. So join me, dear viewers, as we embark on a journey into the heart of darkness, exploring the twisted corridors of the human psyche in search of truth and understanding. For in the shadows of fear and uncertainty, there are tales waiting to be told, tales of terror and triumph, of horror and hope. And though the road may be long and fraught with peril, we shall journey forth together, fearless in the face of the unknown, eager to uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the darkness. So gather round, dear viewers, and prepare yourselves for a journey into the unknown, for the tales of terror that await us are sure to leave you breathless and eager for more.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the video. We highly recommend you watch the next video here. Oops. I'm waiting for you to click. Yes, you've clicked. Happy watching.